Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learning Impact 2021. We are really pleased to have Emily Bell from Fulton County Schools and Tim Beekman from Safari Montage for today's session, leveraging digital learning to grow future-ready students in Fulton County Schools, Georgia. And so from there, I'm going to turn it over to Emily and Tim. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Emily Bell. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Fulton County Schools in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am happy to be with my co-host, Tim Beekman.
I'm Tim Beekman, President and co-founder of Safari Montage. And it's a pleasure to work with Emily. She is very innovative, leading the charge on what we're doing with Microsoft, and very exciting, her direction and where she's headed. One of the things I want to talk about is, since this is an IMS conference, is basically certification. Safari is a strong believer in certification across the board. We're very excited that Microsoft is getting into a lot of thin common cartridge LTI integrations in the last 6 months, and a call I had 2 days ago really enforced that that's getting better, which for all of you that are using Microsoft is going to open up a lot of doors. Next slide, please. This is a quick slide that we could talk for days, but it's important that Emily gets most of this time because I think her vision and where she's headed is very important to all of you. Safari is the learning object repository and a content library. And when you look at protecting what you build, the ability to be able to select different systems, to change over time, to process, Safari is the key to that. As you look at the amount of content that's out there and how you're going to interface it and leverage it, analytical data on it down to the object from any vendor, it's extremely important. And that's a nutshell what this represents. Next slide. The other piece, we talk about partners between districts and vendors. Well, Safari is a partner between vendors and vendors. We interface with everything you see on the board here via standards. We make sure that that interfaces correctly, that we get data on it, that we can interface to it, that we can move the bar on an enterprise level learning object repository and classroom management, as well as content for a district. You know, we don't need to be the front piece of the play, but we need to be the place you can manage, facilitate all of your content needs. Next slide. This is just a little bit of our access to Microsoft. And most of you probably aren't aware that now we're a big partner to Microsoft. We are now servicing our content and systems off the Microsoft cloud, and which is very unique since last year all we did was localize servers. We also interface across all their platforms, including Teams, which is very cool. And we can bring in all the other pieces of their items into all of our other systems like a Schoology or a Google and so forth and so on. Next slide, please. You know, this is just a concept of federated search. And I think the thing to remember when you look at Safari for federated search is that top bar. Isn't it great that we have one place where you can get everything? You could get your dashboard content, you could get your OneDrive content, your Google content, your package content, content you create, and build your instructional process from that. You can see on the second line, the Teams integration, immersive reader. And so all of those are instant. They're not having to do something special, go out, go in, they can do it instantly. Next slide. You know, this is just a concept of immersive reader, which is built into our playlist. And I'm not going to go into detail on this just because of time. But this is really unique in that working directly with Microsoft and Fulton, we have added the immersive readers and sections into the quality of the product and the ability for it to be transparent within Safari Montage. Next slide. You know, and this is just a copy of our lore lesson presenter. We are now starting to interface this into Teams immensely. So if you're looking to take that Teams to the next level, like Emily's doing, where you really got it as a learning store and a place where you can do course outlines and lessons inside your Microsoft Teams, we have moved the bar on that, and with our LLP, and integrate that into the system. Next slide. Same thing coming up shortly. We've just done another enhancement, which we're all excited about, with input from Fulton and other bibs and some other very high level Microsoft Teams integration that we're now embedded inside of Teams. There's not like going in and out. You can play objects inside of Teams. You can play a playlist inside of Teams. You can see us on the top of the dashboard. And so the student or the teacher doesn't have to leave Teams to get to any section of Safari Montage. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Emily. I know I went fast on that, but Emily has a lot to say. I'm going to say a little bit about Emily. She is leading the charge in what we're doing with Teams and Microsoft, and she's also leading the charge across the nation with Microsoft in her vision. So Emily, you're up.
Fantastic. Well, on this slide, you see a little bit of the demographics for our school district. We are a large school district in the metro area of Atlanta. We have a very diverse district in that some of our students, lots of our students have economic challenges. We have a variety of different languages. We have schools, about 100 different schools, and we stretch 77 miles from the northernmost point of our district to the southernmost point of our district. So inherently, we had geographic challenges as well as the typical things that you would see in a district. What you're looking at here is a slide of our digital ecosystem. These are some of the most prevalent district applications that we have in our district that are organized according to category area. So in the heart of of this diagram is our analytic services. We use Power BI. We do have an on-prem data warehouse. I won't read all of this to you, but this slide is meant to illustrate that we are very complex in our digital ecosystem as well. I want to draw your attention over to the communication and collaboration piece, where you see Microsoft 365, Edgenuity, and FCS Hub. In that space in particular, we have recently made changes. Let's talk about where we all were in March of 2020. That is a point in time that none of us will forget. In March of 2020, that is when schools began to shift into remote because of the pandemic. In March of 2020, that piece of my ecosystem was definitely more complicated. Half of our schools were using G Suite, and half of our schools were using Microsoft 365. And then we had other platforms sprinkled in there for communication and collaboration. Our district had already been leaning into digital learning days. So we had planned days where students stayed at home and interacted with a communication and collaboration platform, or over on this blue side, an instructional application platform. They were at home doing that on planned digital learning days, but they were all doing something different. So when we go into March and our schools, all of them shift into remote, they were all using different communication and collaboration platforms, instructional applications. We were doing things really well, but we were all doing something differently. In May of 2020, we're ending that school year. The district sends out a survey to our parents. What went right when we went to remote learning? What could we improve? the number one piece of feedback that parents gave us is, we don't like having to go to all of these different platforms. Some of our parents might have had 3 children in the home. Each of those 3 children were in different level schools, a high school, a middle school, elementary school. Each of those schools were doing different platforms. Each of those teachers in those schools might have been using different platforms. And here's the parent, and even in some instances, the grandparent, having to be the facilitator and helping the student navigate all these platforms. When we were in school, that's okay. The teacher's right there. We've got on-site support to get in and out of platforms. When everybody went home, it was hard for our families to have all of these different things going on. So our superintendent met with leadership, and we made decisions around the singular platform that we would use for collaboration and productivity. And the district decided to lean into Microsoft. We have a Microsoft A5 license, and we were excited about leveraging that license in really high, powerful ways to help our families and to provide that one consistent platform that was needed. So Teams became our platform, and it exploded. In 2018, we only had about 4,500 class or staff teams going on. And so you can see the numbers on your screen and how it exploded. In 2020, we began using SDS, the school data sync, to provision classes automatically for our teachers. So that's why our class numbers increased. So we also had an increase in Safari Montage. So Tim talked earlier about the integration between Teams and Safari Montage. Our district has had Safari Montage for several years, but with the integration with Teams, our schools pretty much organically began to find how easy it was to pull in standards aligned, high quality content into their Teams class. And look at this percentage. That's real. 300% increase is a real stat. We definitely saw an increase in the use of Safari Montage content once teachers were able to pull that into their team. So what were the reasons? Well, the resources were in one place. We did align the standards. We can meta tag our content, and we had a number of playlists that we shared between other districts, because we can do that as long as the other district agrees. We can share playlists. We were all leaning in to providing digital content. So here are some of the lessons that we learned during this COVID, and we continue to learn. In Fulton, we didn't try to do anything dramatically different. We didn't try to hit an easy button and buy this expensive learning platform and try to turn it on in 60 days. Instead, we leaned into our existing platforms. We already had a Microsoft license. We already had Teams. Not all the schools were using it, but it was easy to scale it and sustain it and support it throughout the district because we already had it. We already had Safari Montage, so we began to leverage that existing platform too. Certainly the second bullet points to a vendor relationship, partners that will listen and work with you to accomplish goals. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to talk about how Safari listened and partnered with us for the next piece of our journey. The third bullet here just points to the fact that platforms do have to be standards compliant. The IMS global standards of one roster, we're moving into the case data standard and that journey. These are important level sets that will make your digital journey successful, made our digital learning journey successful. So Tim showed you earlier a picture of the lore, the possibilities for Safari Montage and all the various integrations and supports that are capable in Safari Montage. This is us. This is a picture of the Fulton County Schools lore. So you're right inside of our on-prem server here. And I want to draw your attention to this blue arrow that says L&T videos, and it points to Fulton Tube. Excuse me. Fulton Tube is our brand for our IPTV. IPTV, in layman's terms, is our school broadcast. The ability for schools to do like little news shows and broadcast those in the school. With Fulton Tube, we were actually able to broadcast outside the school. Okay, that's important. Most of our applications, you have to be validated, authenticated with a Fulton County login. Anybody from the outside cannot access that content. But our Board of Education, in listening to our community, started asking about more resources available for parents at home. Parents who could not authenticate to our Fulton system, but wanted to see and search for resources on their own. So these L&T videos our learning and teaching department created a number of videos so our parents could access them and facilitate learning at home if they were remote. And we put this in our instance of Safari Montage lore and accessible through our Fulton Tube, which is open to the outside world. We branded this the Curriculum Hub. So you can see this tiny icon off to the left of your screen that's foundational to our lore. So let's dig into that a little bit more. The Curriculum Hub just launched this school year. And this is a screenshot of the landing page. You can see we have the 4 core discipline areas. And in the middle of the screen, you can see that we actually have our year-to-glance pacing guide. So we're in October. Our students in grade 1 English language arts are in unit 2. They're doing applying reading strategies. Our parents can come here, see exactly what unit their students are working on. And then, oh, sorry, I flipped too fast. Then they can see all the prioritized standards and learning targets, and they can have access to resources. So this was a partnership. It was a partnership built on our digital ecosystem, our use of Teams. Infinite Campus is definitely a big player in that. That is the source file that helps us provision all of the Teams classes. All of the resources that we have in the Curriculum Hub and in our lore are aligned to our Standards Mastery Framework, which is really our Georgia Standards of Excellence in prioritized format. And what this did is it really gave us a lot of flexibility and adaptability. So behind the scenes, we're doing a lot of healthy work with our standards to get them case formatted. So it will not only be beneficial to our parent hub and our upcoming teacher hub, but all other instructional platforms. So here's a slide that kind of summarizes putting context to clicks. What are the measures for a healthy digital learner? We want to look at the scope of academics. We want to look at a balance. We want to have positive online behaviors. We also need our platforms to actually measure student engagement. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how many times I was asked for data when our students were remote on how our students were engaged. What are the numbers in Teams? How many meetings are they in? How many minutes were they there? How were they engaging with iReady, with our other instructional platforms? If so, how long and how well were they doing? We need our platforms to be able to measure that student engagement. And it needs to align to the standards to inform us. Are they getting it? What else do we need to recommend to get them to the level of mastery? So the benefits of a district LOR. I actually had to review this with our executive leadership recently because the LOR, actually, I want to tell you the truth. I need that LOR to be behind the scenes and a teacher really not even understand that it's Safari Montage. That LOR should just be the place where they're pulling in content to their instructional platform. So the LOR simplifies that workflow. It's in the LOR, and then you pull it into Teams. It's kind of the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain with all of that content ready to pull in. Of course, it enhances and aligns content to state standards. Guys, we know our teachers are struggling to find high quality content. They're out there on Teachers Pay Teachers. They're out there on Pinterest. They're spending an inordinate amount of time looking for content when they could be pulling in high quality content that are already standards aligned and then spending more time with the student on getting him or her to mastery. And of course, this last frame, providing analytical data around all learning objects, that is the name of the game. That is where we need to go. So I probably didn't leave a lot of time for questions, but I know that Mark is monitoring the chat. And if we have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any.
Mark, any questions?
Not at this point.
Okay. I got one
this
for,
morning.
Yeah, I got one for Emily. I mean, Emily, a few years ago, you had different LMSs in different locations by school, and you decided to go to Teams. How did you make that transition work for you? Because a lot of districts struggle with that strategy. Can you give us a little review of how you did that?
Well, it definitely helps for the parent survey to say, we want this. And once our parents said that, then the superintendent said, we're doing this. So having that top-down approach where you make the decision for that standard platform and it comes from your leadership definitely makes the journey a lot easier. Then we partnered with a number of different organizations to help us with professional learning. We have an amazing vanguard team of volunteer teachers and leaders who champion technology. So they're in every building. And we reached out to them and said, help us with this, especially those schools who were not already using Teams. We asked our vanguard to get in there and model the use of Teams. We partner with Kennesaw State University. We have an amazing instructional technology department, small but mighty. We have an amazing professional learning department. So all of these organizations and our Microsoft team, I shouldn't leave them out, especially those schools that were not on Microsoft before. Maybe they were in the G Suite tenant. They leaned into that work with us and did a number of different sessions for our teachers to teach them how to get from Google Classroom over into Teams. So we did a number of professional learning initiatives in the summer of 2020, getting them ready for that fall 2020. We're all going to be in Teams. So I hope that answers your question, Tim, but certainly it took a lot of hands and feet to get that accomplished.
Thanks, Emily. Yes, that answered my question. You know, one more, unless Mark's got some questions, which he hasn't responded, so I assume not. When you came to Fulton and you started to build this infrastructure, how did you get everyone to support your strategies?
Well, Fulton, before I came to Fulton, it was already a really successful district with a very high level digital ecosystem. All of the right things were in the right places. The issue really for me coming in was seeing that our schools were all doing different things. And so for an IT leader, that just really makes it difficult all the way around. It's very hard to support when everyone is doing different things. So I began to have this talking point about standards in the way we choose applications and the way that we deploy those applications. And I brought in a graphic of an umbrella. So you have this umbrella, and the district is going to list applications under that umbrella that are safe, supported, and effective. And if you stay under our umbrella, you won't get wet and you won't get burned. Choose the applications that are under the umbrella rather than going in 100 different places. That's how we began the discussion. And then, of course, when the pandemic hit, it really pushed that agenda forward. I certainly don't wish the pandemic on any generation ever. But in terms of technology, it pushed our roadmap, an already really planned out, well thought out roadmap, 3 to 5 years, it pushed it forward in a matter of months. So
Emily,
here we are now, and we just want
Emily
to learn
and
from what we
Tim,
did.
sorry to interrupt, but I do
Right.
have a question from the chat. Let me share it with you. It's do the analytics you are planning on getting about student usage from Safari Montage involve IMS standards?
Yes, I talked about the case standard. We're about to, so the parent hub that I alluded to and our teacher hub, we did significant work on the backside to make sure our standards mastery framework was case compliant. And so when we begin to lean into the case standard, that's when we're going to be able to really pull in high level analytics across the board. You guys know, I don't have to tell you that different applications have different analytical report services. We use iReady a lot in this district, and iReady has really great reports on students' interaction with content and how well they're doing. And you guys know it aligns really nicely with the milestones exams. Just imagine a world where we are getting that kind of analytical reporting on any kind of content the kid is using. That's what we'll be able to garner once we lean into the case standard for our standards mastery framework and for the instructional platforms our students are using.
Mark, I'll add to that we're also using Caliber feeds and the format and grabbing that data. We're working with Microsoft right now with Emily and with a couple other districts on a big reporting, new reporting model. That's pretty exciting. And that we'll be doing also as well, and interfaces into the case standardization.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both. That wraps up this session. Any parting words before we close down?
Emily?
I'm just happy to be here today. I assume my email address is associated with this presentation. I'd be happy to engage with anybody on your digital learning journey. Certainly, we have much to learn, much road to go, and collaboration is always wonderful.
I just want to say thank you, Mark and Emily, and thanks for hosting this event. We're very proud of what we're doing at Fulton and where we're going to be